Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Voice Like a Lion podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Pemberton, and today I have with us Garrett Peters. He is the co-founder and CEO at Duncan & Stone Paper Company, or Co. We'll say Co. After more than 10 years working with brands at Walmart and Sam's, he and his wife, Stephanie, decided to venture into the world of e-commerce in 2022 to create journals and keepsake books to capture what matters. Garrett, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to be here, dude. Let's go.
Hey, let's do it. I'm excited to talk to you as well. Hey, we'll actually get into it. There's something that we talked about literally as we were pressing record. We were talking about the prophetic stuff. I think that, like I said, this podcast will go wherever. Because what's cool is like I'm a faith-based guy. I believe in I'm a Christian. So the thing is like that's why this picture is here. I was talking to you beforehand. Most people don't realize why this picture even exists. And I think that there's, at least for me, what I've seen in business, and I would love to understand from your side, is when you connect with something bigger than yourself, it makes it a little bit easier to go through the hard times that you experience in business. What has your experience been?
I mean, I love that. I echo that in a real way. And as a follower of Jesus as well, man, I'm right there with you, dude. Like for me, that's our world. That's us, taking a leap of faith to start our business. Like it's all intertwined. And I think there's the reality of whatever faith or whatever your why is, in your world, there's, I think there's power in, living at a place of wholeheartedness around what you believe, what you're about, like whatever it may be, whether it's faith, whatever it is, right? It's like, man, I think there's a lot of power in that. And I've learned a lot more over the last few years about just how to not divide those things up, and just like, hey, my Christian life is here and then my work is here. And then, I have my kids over here. It's like, no. Like you have a one life, like integrated, let's just live out of that place.
Yeah, I think that's something I've experienced over the last, we've been running some kind of business for the last 7-8 years almost. But even now, I mean, realistically, that's one of the things is how do we bring everything together instead of dividing it up? Because what I've seen is even my business partner, he's not a believer. He just kind of believes that it begins with him, ends with him. And I asked him, I said, how is that? And because for me is and he always says this too, is he's at least curious to figure out what's out there. Because for him is when I ask him, it's like when you're the end all be all, if something goes wrong in your life, like that's just your fault and there's nothing you can do and you got to figure it all out on your own. It's like, I don't want that. I don't want to have
like a lot of pressure to me, by the way.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
And that's something for me that when I talk to him, because I mean, he's had so many illnesses and so many things that's come against him. It's like, wouldn't it be just a little easier to sit there and have this conversation and to go and just think upstream for me, because and this is something I've run into for a couple of different things, especially in business. And I've also seen it, especially in faith, is when you believe that you get really deep logically. I mean, it's even scripturally, it says that you're not going to be able to find God by using your human logic. Like you're going to actually have to get outside of logic. That's why science. I actually had a conversation with someone a couple of years ago who was a doctor. And I asked her, it's like, okay, you've been doing scientific studies for the last 20 years. What do you believe? Do you believe God exists or doesn't exist? And she said, from all of my studies of looking at, these organisms, everything, she said, there has to be a God. Wow. And I'm just like, wow, that's crazy. And she has this whole report about why there has to be a God. It's like, because there's just not anything logically that would make sense for this to just kind of randomly happen.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, and I think there's, man, I think that's so cool. And what I've seen over the last 5 years is, and when someone asks me like, how do you guys get to this place? And it's like a combination of hard work and, luck or, favor and faith. Like our business doesn't exist outside of God's hand and control in some of that, but we play a role. Right. And so it's like, not forsaking the hard work and the vision, the strategy, all the sleepless nights. Because when you're passionate about something, when you believe in something, you go for it. And it's like, even if it doesn't succeed from the world standards, like success can be anything really. But, if it doesn't, grow or make it or whatever it may be, it's like, that's okay. There's something about the journey of doing something and pursuing something with your whole heart, I think is really powerful. So.
Yeah. I mean, that's That's pretty much my story, but I would love to hear yours. So 10 years
Of
working
course.
with brands, Walmart, Sam's, what made you decide it's like, hey, this is it? Because I know you mentioned it earlier that there was a leap of faith, but what was that moment for you?
Yeah, man, I'll tell you what happened, Stephen, and it's I've been processing through this recently with Stephanie, my wife, for the last few weeks, as we look backwards,
Yep.
and we just are really looking at 5 years. We celebrated 5 years when our business launched in 2020, so it's kind of a fun season for us. But for me, my story really started about 10 years ago, and so in 2015. Um, I live in Northwest Arkansas. We live in Fayetteville in this area, and we live in it's an amazing community. Like I had a great job. I worked up in Bentonville, working with Walmart and Sam's, vendors and learning retail, and had a really great job, great community. Two young kids. So at the time in 2015, we had a 4-year-old, and my middle son was one at the time. Let's just say. And I'll tell you what happened, man. I found myself in this season of being a young dad and wanting to be a good father and an intentional dad, but getting home, later in the afternoon after work and hanging out with my youngest son for a little bit, putting him to sleep, and then being like, "What just happened? Like, is very weird. This is just a very bizarre season that I went through." And what transpired during that season was like, man, I just didn't really feel like I had control over my time, my day, my schedule, my ability to invest into my sons. And it was just kind of an awakening that happened in me in 2015. And Stephanie and I started dreaming and praying about, well, what could look different? And so we just started asking questions about, is it a job change? Could we invest in another area? Is it what is it? Like, we're just open handed about it, to be honest with you. And, what happened was God kind of took us down different paths. Stephanie tried to start her own little side business doing photography, and that didn't really work out. And so we're doing real estate. Maybe we, get into real estate. We didn't know what the heck that looked like, and didn't really pan out for us. And, so we just started looking at different things. And fast forward to 2019, we have 3 kids now. So we have three boys at our house, and we're doing life with some of our best friends, raising kids together. Sarah and Garland, who are our business partners, we're just doing life with them. Well, Sarah had an Etsy business on the side, and so this was kind of her creative outlet. She was selling different cards and different types of products on Etsy. And what's funny, man, is we're like hanging out with them, raising kids, asking her questions about this side business that's doing really well as this little side hustle that she had. And one thing led to the other, man, and we just started processing through what that could look like. And so the door kind of opened for us to start our own business, and we started Duncan and Stone in 2019. And it was a combination of multiple things. It was like I was kind of just fed up with the system of sorts, to be completely honest with you, of like, I wanted more. There was something like in me and in Stephanie and I both where we wanted more. And as fate would have it, we just were in the right place at the right time, with some of our best friends. And Sarah had incredible vision around what kind of a brand could look like and products could look like. And we went on a path that started in 2019 to start something, and ended up launching in 2020, and haven't looked back.
Well, that's really cool. There's a lot there that reminds me of my story and my wife's
Yeah.
story, because it's pretty interesting. There's like, for us, I'll give you the short version of it, but my wife, uh, she was a stay-at-home mom for a period of time. At this time, I was in a Fortune 500 company. I was one of the fastest movers in this company, so we moved all around the United States at this time. And I had
Mm.
taken over a entire location pretty much at 24. And we also had a really young son. And I was working 14 to 16 hours a day, so I wouldn't see him ever. I mean, I pretty much would come home and he was asleep. And then by the time I woke up, he was up and doing stuff. He was doing homeschool with my wife. And then eventually she just was fed up and was like, all right, look, there's got to be more to this. I mean, she's one of the hardest working, smartest people I know. And I knew it wouldn't take long for her to just get fed up with that life. So she puts it up on Facebook, which is the cardinal sin. You just never do that. But luckily, my mom reached out to her and was like, hey, I'm doing this Amazon thing. Do you want to check it out? So she gets on a call with my mom and she checks it out. And she's like, hey, what do you think? And I said, absolutely not. Why would we do that? It's like, I'm literally about to get a 6-figure raise. It's like, why would I do that? It's like, there's no way. We're not going to do this. And so 2 days later, she tells my mom yes and does it anyways. And I just remember being the literal epitome of the unsupportive spouse. I was super unsupportive for quite a while, but because it didn't make sense to me. It's like, you could go get a job and get paid right now, but you're going to do this thing and not get paid. That doesn't make sense to me. Yeah. And I remember watching her. There was one time I came home and I worked 14 hours and she's up working. And then I go to bed and I wake up and she's up working. And I went, okay, let me do the math. It's like, so she definitely is outworking me right now. It's like, just because the money's not there doesn't mean she's not outworking me. So then I started helping out around the house. I was much more supportive. And it was cool to watch her go from someone who would be upset whenever there was a bad feedback or a 1-star review or something like that, or a return. And then she grew that business to over 7 figures. It was $1 million from 2018 to 2019. Wow. And what was really cool, 6 employees, all the things in a year. And so in 2020 is I'm working in supply chain and logistics in a Fortune 500 company. It's like, this makes sense to me. And so I was a manager and I understood how to hire, how to fire, how to train. I also understood supply chain and logistics. So I was like, hey, let me help you out. So I started helping her restructure the company early 2020. And then COVID hits and it's like, oh, this could not be a worse time for this to happen. And then all of a sudden in May of 2020, I started having anxiety attacks for the first time in my life. And what happens during these anxiety attacks, and at the same time, I'm finding my faith again. So I grew up in church, but only God I really knew was like the one in the Bible. He was just the red letters on the page. I never actually knew God. So for me, in 2020, I started actually praying. I've got a 30-minute commute one way. So I'm just like, I'm going to talk to the passenger seat all the way there. So I started doing that. And then I remember in May, I started having anxiety attacks. And I told the Lord, I said, hey, don't take it from me. Like, this is a chance for my faith to be tested. And faith untested can't be trusted is what I just remember saying that very, very vividly. Yeah. And so in May of 2020, having these anxiety attacks. In June, this has only happened to me once. I was in the mechanic shop at this location I'm at. I was working at Pepsi at the time. And I remember being there. It's 2:30 in the morning. And I hear somebody tell me, you're done here. So I freak out and I go, I'm getting fired because I'm not supposed to be in here. And it was audible. And I look around, there's no one. And so I say, okay, Lord, if that's you, am I done? Where am I done? Am I done in here? Am I done with the job? What am I done with? And I heard him specifically tell me, he said, you're done with the job. And this was my whole identity. Like, this was my whole life. This thing got me out of a basement when I thought that I was a failure at 20 years old. So I said, okay. So the first thing I did was I told my wife, and she was supportive, thank God. But then I called this guy who I'd met earlier in 2020. He was a business owner, a Christian, and he had been in business for over 10 years. And I hit him up and I said, hey, I feel like the Lord's telling me to quit my job. What should I do? And he goes, if the Lord's telling you to do that, why'd you even call me? And I went, dude, you're supposed to be supportive. Like, help me out here. But it was pretty cool. A couple of weeks later, I put in that 2-week notice. And that's probably still one of the hardest things I've had to do. Wow. And then I told everyone else because I knew I had to protect that seed of faith, because I just knew if I told the wrong person that it would be like putting poison on something that I knew was God. This is the only time I feel like I've ever heard him audibly. Quit the job. A few months later, I'm just like, okay, it's going to be amazing. We're doing Amazon. Amazon shuts us down. Now we're $100,000 in debt. I'm just like, what is happening? And then we got blessed with we ended up shifting because we tried everything. You understand this being in e-commerce. Yeah. We tried wholesale. We tried getting rid of all of our inventory, like pennies on the dollar. We tried doing everything, and there was nothing we could do, and we needed the money. And so it's like, what's about to happen? So I cry out. I'm on the floor alone, just crying out. It's like, Lord, you told me to do this. What are we doing here? And then we ended up starting a Shopify store. Mainly our acquisitions channel was Facebook Marketplace, Facebook Shops. And then it went very quickly from zero to over $1 million. I mean, in less than a year. And that And the coolest thing was we were able to help 170 underprivileged kids have Christmas. This was in Tennessee. We lived in Tennessee at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and this was finding them in the school system in Tennessee. It was like $50,000 that we were able to give to these kids through gifts and through clothing that they wouldn't have been able to get. So when I hear your story, it reminds me very much of my story and what we've been through. So what have you found, especially in that first year? Because it's like, okay, you decide no more of these other things. We're going to focus on this. When you finally focus all your energy and attention into this, what were some of the things that you didn't expect to happen that happened?
That's a great question, man. So when we started the business in 2019, and like I said, launched in 2020, it was, I really didn't. Stephanie, my wife, has more of a gift of faith than me in the sense of like, she's kind of like seeing ahead, she sees that we're going to be successful, and she's like at least hoping and believing for that. And I'm like, we'll see. I don't know, maybe. More the skeptical husband, probably like you are back in the day. And, I was just like, let's just see what happens. I think that in my mind, I was hopeful that this thing that we're starting to build could become something that was more of a full-time like deal. That was always my hope, was like, maybe I could do this full-time. But it was a side business for me for about a year and a half or so, maybe close to 2 years. But I tell you what, I look back at that season that we were in of young kids at the house. We're starting the business out of our house. Our co-founders also live close to us as well. And it was a full-on like family run, scrappy bootstrap business, man. I mean, we launched on Amazon. We were fulfilling, we're packing up boxes to send to FBA. Like, we're starting the website. We're packing up orders for Christmas. And it was just, I felt so much. It was so much fun and so much like, it was exhausting, no doubt about it. But it was like, man, this is so sweet. It was just a sweet time of like, you're building something. Like, we're just like, our head was down, man. We were just grinding, doing anything we could to like get our business off the ground, reading, listening to folks like you that were out there that understood the space. And so we're just rocking and rolling, man. And I think one of the surprising things was, I didn't realize like how much, I don't know, like there's a season when you go through hard things where you develop this resiliency and grit around doing challenging things. Like, I didn't realize how much I needed that and how much I love that. And so it wasn't at the time. It's one of those things where it's like, it's not always fun when you're going through it, right? It's not like, man, this is so great that we're like killing ourselves and we're staying up late talking to our manufacturing partners overseas and da-da-da. It's like, at the time, it's like, God, this is tiring, right? This is exhausting. But when we're 2020, starting the business and launching and then kind of growing it, we got to the end of 2020 and we were first holiday season, we're throwing like fulfillment parties at our house, playing Christmas music, like printing labels. Just, dude, it was wild times. And it was fun. It was really fun. Now, we quickly learned that it's not sustainable. Like, hey, we might need to start looking at doing different things, which obviously took us down a different path. But man, those early years when you're starting something are for most people, like, and not a lot of people knew what was going on. It's like there's a few close friends, obviously, but like what we went through as a team for those early years was really special.
That's something you talked about it just for a second, but you talked about the resiliency and the grit part. This is something that I've noticed, at least for me, and I would love to get your perspective on it, is when you look back on a season, you go, oh yeah, that was kind of hard. It's like, but for me, what I found is I go, oh yeah, that was kind of hard. It's like, but I remember all these good things. And it was really fun. And we were able to do X, Y, and Z. And it actually is much harder for me to go back into the moment and figure out, it's like, what was the actual hard though? It's like, because I look back on it and I go, I know it was hard, but I don't remember the hard. It's like, when you get a pizza and a really hot piece of pizza and you eat it and it burns the top of your mouth, and then you get that same pizza next week and then you bite it and it burns the top of your mouth. It's like you
Remember
just
that?
remember the really good part of the pizza. You don't
Yeah,
remember this
yeah.
thing burned the mess out of me.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. It's like it's in some way kind of, I laugh about this because we have 3 kids. And, it's funny how we keep having kids, although having a baby is extremely difficult. And like
Yeah.
something happens like after you get out of the season, like if you're asked like a new parent, most new parents, maybe not all, it's like, ain't nobody want to have more kids after you got a baby. It's like, this is the hardest thing ever. Like, I don't want to have any more kids, but yet we keep having more kids. Like, what the heck? What's that about? It's like there's something that happens like this, some sort of like weird amnesia that you forget some of those. You knew it was hard, but yet you want to do it again. It's like, it's a very bizarre thing, I think. But man, I actually remember a lot of the hard stuff. To be honest, I'm kind of the opposite. I actually think about all of the hard things quite a bit. And so, man, I think there's, we were young. We were just young business owners, and there was so many things we didn't know. There was
Mm-hmm.
things about um, communication styles and financials and you basically, you name it, and we didn't know it, to be honest, outside of like, hey, we know what a good product should look like,
Yeah.
so there's a lot of heartache when you don't know what you don't know. And so through trial and error, we just grew, and you learn along the way, and you show each other grace, and you try to get better. And we had to make a lot of adjustments to like outsource things. And if we're going to continue to scale, we need to change the business model along the way. But one thing I wouldn't change is us doing basically every piece of our business at the first.
Yeah.
There were certain things that we truly were like, we don't do paid media stuff. Like, I don't understand how all the things work in the interwebs. Like, we're going to have somebody else do some of that stuff. But, almost every other piece of our business we were doing. And some mentors of mine and people in the space were advising not to do that. I would say, like, hey, why don't you have somebody else do these other pieces of the business? Does the CEO need to be boxing up products? Probably not. I mean, honestly, but um, I wouldn't change that because it gave us such clarity around how our business works. It's like
Yep.
you understand the ins and outs of it, and now like I know like this is how our business operates. We did it, and some of the things we still do, which we probably shouldn't do, but here we are. But I think there's so much value in that, man. When you're trying to start something, when you're like trying to do something new, like you got to understand it. You got to like figure out how it works. And that we went through that season for many years.
I mean, that makes me think of, I have a good buddy that he is all venture backed. So the way he started his business, he started a couple years ago. He's already he raised his initial seed round, and then his seed A was like 13 million. And then his seed B, he was raising another 18 million. And I asked him a question because when you raise capital and you are capital backed versus bootstrap, it's way different the way you approach
Yeah.
business. And for me, we've only ever bootstrapped. So I was curious, like, okay, what's the mindset on this? And he said, I want it to be as big as humanly possible, as fast as possible. And I go, but what is that like? And he goes, well, let me give you an example. He was in the middle of raising his seed B. He goes, if we don't get our money by this date, we're dead. He said, we're just dead. He's like, we need 18 million. And if we don't get it, we're dead. And I went, how does that affect you? He goes, it doesn't. He said, it's actually a lot of fun. He said, we're going as fast. He's like, this is actually really cool. And I went, okay. So for me, is the reason why I like bootstrapping for a multitude of reasons. It's easier for you to be profitable faster if you do it. But secondly, is you're close to the product and the customer. I think that
Yeah.
that's something that happens really quick. I mean, especially in this day and age, everyone wants to think about how can I make the most scalable thing possible. And it's like, first and foremost, you need to make sure your product's good. Secondly, is you need to make sure that the customers are interacting with the product the way that you expected it. And you don't want to hire out before you have an understanding of your business. I actually love the way you guys did that, because what I found is if you're intricately involved in marketing, whatever that is, if you're just on social medias and you're growing it, and then you hired someone to do paid media or however you guys decided to do it, you're close to it. If you started, because we have friends that they started in farmers markets, it's like, okay, you started close to the customer, and then Of course, you're not going to scale farmers markets. Like that's good. That's pretty hard to scale farmers markets, but
Yeah.
you do the unscalable in the beginning because you want to understand, okay, this person bought my cake. Do they actually like it? And it's like, oh, how many cakes can I sell in a day? It's like, no, you want to make sure the cake is actually good, because if the cake sucks and you scale it up, and then you're just going to have bad brand reputation.
Man, that's so good. I love that. I heard recently, there's this guy that I follow and have become friends with, who sold his brand a couple years ago, and he built a really large brand. And he was telling me, he was on me about calling customers and engaging with the customers. And I was like, this dude was the founder of this massive brand, and he would still call up customers, man, just literally on the phone, and ask them questions and ask about the products and ask about what they're looking for. And I was like, bro, it was so challenging to me, because I'm like, I need to be doing that. I need to be staying close. And I love the way you said that, is like staying close to the product and the customer. I'm like, that's so key. And like, if you lose that, because if we lose that, if our customers don't want to buy our stuff, we don't exist. We actually stop existing. And so I'm like, if we stop listening to them, that is a major issue for us. And so, doing the unscalable things is, I think there's some richness in that.
I think it's interesting. I heard a podcast with the founder of ButcherBox. So ButcherBox is doing right around $600 million a year. That's quite a bit. And he's the CEO and the founder, and he still interacts with the customers because he wants to understand, are they actually enjoying getting this thing? And the thing is that most people hear 600 million and go, oh man, I would love to have that because of what you can buy with it. It's like, but do you understand that his churn rate is 12,000 customers? He needs 12,000 new customers a month. It's like, that's crazy. And so what I sit there and I think about, especially, I love that was a piece of advice that they gave you, because there's two things that play into that. Is one, you're not just staying close to the customer to understand, do they enjoy the products that you like? What's cool is if you do that consistently enough, is you get to do the second part, which I'm sure he's done this as well, is you can ask them, it's like, hey, what else would you like to see from us? Instead of you coming out with a new product line. Because this is what I've noticed time and time again with people, that they want to get to 8 figures. They want to get, to 20, 30, 50 million. Is like, they just start coming out with a bunch of stuff and going wide. It's like, nobody asked for that. The founder of Quest, he talked about this, as he said, what would be great? People love our protein stuff. We're going to come out with apparel. And nobody bought it. But he never asked the customers. So, of course, they didn't want apparel. It's like, you're making protein bars and protein shakes. Why do I want a shirt? It's like, I don't want a shirt. So I think that's a key thing about staying close to the customers. You get to ask them questions, and they get to tell you, not only with their mouths, but also with their dollars. It's like, okay, great. Can I send you a wait list? It's like, oh yeah, great. I'll sit on the wait list and I'll get it first because of whatever else is going on. But
dude, I tell you what brand has got me. I tell you what brand has got me hooked is this hat brand Melon. This Melon brand, that I love hats. This isn't a melon.
Oh, I love hats too.
This is not a melon hat. This is like a knockoff, but whatever. But dude, they get me every time. Like anytime they come out with something, it's like they've completely hooked me. And I'm like, it's so impressive, because if they have a drop or something, they're like, sign up for a wait list. I'm like, dude, I'm signing up for that thing like so fast. It's so stupid. Like, how in the world they like? I need them out of my mind. It's unbelievable.
There's some people that are great at that, and I love those kinds of. There's a brand, Represent. They're represent.com. So they do 9 figures, or a little over $100 million a year. But what's fascinating about the way that they do business is they have some things that you can buy, but they have this thing called the vault. And if you want access to the vault, then you have to be on the subscription, and the vault is where all their drops come in. So basically what they'll do is, let's say you're coming out for you guys, let's say you're coming out with a new journal, if these people are subscribed, they get access to it 3 days before anyone else. So you're having monthly reoccurring revenue happen before a drop ever hits. A drop hits, and then if it doesn't sell out, then it goes to the rest of the customers who are not subscribers. And it's like, that's so smart to me.
That is such a smart idea.
It's like, that's crazy. They turned it into a subscription base without it being a subscription box. Because most people think subscription box, how do I do that? It's like, no, these people, you pay to get their drops pretty much.
Wow. That's next level. That's a goal right there.
But that's what I love. There's so many things about e-commerce that I've realized, even after having our own brands, that there's so many things you can do that I didn't even know you could do. I didn't know you could do that. And then
Yeah, no,
now that I've been outside of a brand and researching all these bigger brands, it's like, oh wait, you can do
you do
some
this.
pretty cool, crazy
Yeah,
things like that. Or
it's really,
exclusivity, you have 50 of them, you can mark
yeah.
them higher, they sell out, whatever.
It's so sweet, man. So much to learn. That's what I love about it, man. And whether it's e-commerce or whatever, like
Yeah.
it's, I think you got to have this learner's mindset. You got to be
Yes.
curious. Like you got to be open to new things, to new changes, to how people are doing it different. And I think that the greatest companies out there are have that part of their DNA, you know. And then when
Yeah.
you stop doing that, it's like, dude, I think that's a big issue, you know.
Yeah. When you think you know it all, that actually, this is a really good point. This will bring us towards the end of the show. But
Yeah.
I had a guy on the podcast that he's helped brands go from zero to over $100 million. He's helped 5 of those. And he's helped, I think, his 50 go to over 8 figures. So he helped him get to about 20 million. He's helped hundreds get to over a million. And I asked him that question. It's like, okay, what is the biggest thing that holds somebody back? And let's say I'm doing $1 million a year and I want to get to 100 million. What is the biggest thing that you see? And I was expecting really practical things. Well, they need to figure out their marketing. They need to learn how to hire, leadership, whatever. And he said something that kind of blew me away, and I've used it ever since. Is he said, "Oh, that's easy, ego," and I went, "Ego,"
Wow.
and he goes, "Yeah, ego." He said, "The person who got to over $1 million a year, they have hustled, they've grinded, and now they believe that they are the end all be all. So they're not willing to listen and learn and grow." He said, "So because they're not willing to learn that, it's like they don't grow." The thing that
Mm,
I'd like to attach to it is once you get over $5 million a year, what I've seen to get to $10 million to get to $20 million is now you got to start hiring people to tell you what to do. And that's a big hit to most people's ego. It's like, no, I built this thing. This is my baby. This is my thing. How are they going to tell me what to do? It's like they
yep.
weren't here in the early days, packing stuff up with me. It's like, no, this is why you want these
Yeah.
people to tell you, hey, this is what our next best steps are. I watched one brand where this guy went from a million to 5 million very quickly, like literally in less than 2 years. And one of the things he did was he got to a million slow. Then he went from a million to 5 really fast because he just hired people and they just told him, hey, we need to do this. And he was
Yeah.
willing to just release. And that's something I've seen the best CEOs is they learn how to let go. You
Wow.
want to say no to more things you say yes to, and you want to let
Yep.
go of more tasks than you're doing. It's like because now the shift happens where you go from being the doer to being the thinker. You got to look
Mhm.
down the road. Where are we going in the next month, 5 months, within the next year? What does it look like if Trump does actually execute
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
tariffs? It's like you
Yeah.
can't just do more to get out of what's happening. You have to think and you have to release.
Well, dude, I think you absolutely nailed it. First off, I need I need you to connect me with those dudes. I need to know. I need a lot of help, Stephen. No, in all seriousness, like that's what you just described is very. Yeah, I echo it 100%. And literally, we're in that season of our business as well. And 5 years in, doing around $5 million, and built a really healthy, very solid business. But it's like, starting to ask the question of like, well, what got us here isn't going to take us to this next
Yeah.
stage. One, it's like getting clarity around where we want to go because, for us, we wrestled as a team and owners, like, what do we want to be? Do we want to be $100 million business? Maybe no, like probably not, honestly. And so, um, we getting really tied around what do you want to go for and what's the vision and kind of where you want to be and then releasing. So for us,
Yep.
we're going through that season right now of, hey, we do want to keep growing in a healthy way. And, but what is that going to look like? What's it going to take? Is it going to take, it's going to take a new way to think. It's going to take a new way to run the business and get to a 10 million and beyond kind of number. And that's the tension. That's the tension of like, you have founders and people that have built this company. It's like, whoa, time out, man. Like what's going on? But I that's one piece of my world that I love is like I have teammates, I have a wife and some of our best friends and we get to wrestle with those things. And I don't feel like I'm doing it on an island, which is nice,
Yeah.
so anyway, it's a journey.
Yeah. That's what the one thing I would give you guys is just figuring out what that North Star is.
Yeah.
Because if you got, and especially because there are 4 of you, is maybe one of you, the North Star, is like, hey, I want to be Quest. I want to sell for $1 billion. Maybe one of them's like, hey, I'm good with a lifestyle brand. Like
Yeah.
I'm good right where we're at.
Yeah.
Another one
Yeah.
is like, I'm good at, I want to get to 10 million. Then another person, it's like just figuring out where that aligned North Star is, because there's so many different ways you can go about it once you have a North Star. I mean, a good example is like the Butcher Box guy. The Butcher Box guy is his North Star is he wants it to be a legacy brand. So that just means he wants this thing to be around in 100 years. So if that's the case, his other founders and the partners and stuff, they don't. They're just like, okay, we want to exit, and he's had to do it time and time and time again, where he's had to shell out millions of dollars to buy out his founders. So that's okay, because he told them, he's like, we're not going to IPO, we're not going to go public. He said, so this thing isn't going to be a multi-billion-dollar brand by going public. He said, we're going to hold it. He's like, the only way for you to exit, he said, I'm not going to sell it. So the only way for you to exit is for me to buy back your equity. So that's the big thing is there's so many different ways that a North Star can happen, but just sitting down and getting clarity is, what is this thing for us?
I agree, man. I agree. That's so good. I love that.
Awesome. Garrett, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I appreciate it. I told you it was pretty easy conversation.
Of course, man. No, you did it. You nailed it, man. I enjoyed it. Such an easy person to talk to, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Appreciate you. For everyone listening, we'll see you in the next episode.
All right. See you guys.